Let's continue with the survey life cycle. We have three aspects here: the life cycle from a design perspective, the life cycle from a process perspective, and the life cycle from a quality perspective. We'll start with the design perspective. First one, as I mentioned before, we can look at this from two aspects: measurement and representation. The goal is to form a survey statistic in the end, and doing so in a good way. So let's look at this step by step. On the measurement side, we have a construct. The construct could be police reported crime. That's something a government can be interested in. We have a construct. That means we have all information sought by a researcher, usually described in words. It can be abstract, satisfaction with a class. It can be abstract as in believe in God, or happiness, or quality of life, or, as mentioned before, crime. In order to measure this, you have to ask individual items. And one of such items could be, during the last 6 months, did you call the police to report something that happened to you that you thought was a crime? With that, you will get information from each respondent, assuming that the answer they give to this does relate up to the police reported crime that you're actually interested in. Now, the measurement itself links the theoretical construct to the observed variables. There are many steps involved in that, and our course on questionnaire design, which is part of the specialization, will tell you at length the different pieces on how to do that. Depending on what kind of data collection you are using, you have either questions as the measurements or individual observations, if it's a study where you observe behaviors. For example, clicks on a website would be an observation, a measurement that relates to a larger concept, for example, interest in a particular item on a website. If you do surveys of soil, then it would be your soil sample and measures that you take off that soil sample that fall in here, or a measure of blood pressure if you work in the public health area. Then you get an individual response. And this is interesting now. This is in the questionnaire setting, the answer to that particular question. In a blood pressure reading, it would be a specific reading from a specific person. And it is important to separate that conceptually from the measurement itself, from the question, because there could be slight variation. We all know that with blood pressure, right? If you measure now and you measure half an hour from now, when I'm done with these recordings, likely my blood pressure will be different. And the same is, of course, or could of course be true with answers. In this particular case, the response is, I called them, the police, about my neighbor's car hitting my mailbox. And the interviewer recorded 1 for yes. So that would be a recording of a response. However, that's not the end of the story. So when the response is recorded, that's the responded outcome for that particular measurement. The answer to the question, the quantity of the soil, the number of blood pressure from the blood pressure device, or a record extraction in our examples. But this particular number might not be the correct one. So in our survey example, we might have notes from the interviewer stating that this was the neighbor's car hitting the respondent's mailbox, which then can be by an editor classified as actually an accident rather than a crime, and thus should not be part of the measurement that we are trying to achieve. So in this case, the response would be edited from 1 yes to 2 no. Only then would we properly capture the measurement part of this process. So the editing of the responses means that after editing, the particular value stored in our data and recorded so that it can be used for the analysis.